A man is loading bullets into a handgun. His name is Jackson. He used to be a top-notch Navy man who once had a happy family, a lovely daughter and a smart, capable wife. But then a sudden accident shattered that happiness and threw Jackson's life into the abyss. That day, he and his daughter were outside in the front yard playing with a newly bought ball. Jackson tossed the ball to his daughter, and she tossed it back. Neither of them had any idea that danger was quietly closing in. A teenager was driving recklessly down the street. As Jackson threw the ball to his daughter for the second time, she failed to catch it. The ball hit the ground and rolled toward the road in front of their house. Quickly reaching the middle of the street, she ran to grab it. But just as she reached the middle, the teenager's car suddenly appeared. The young driver was caught off guard, and the little girl was so terrified she couldn't react in time. Jackson and his wife noticed the danger and rushed forward, but it was too late. Their daughter, Helly, died in the sudden car accident. Her death completely changed Jackson's life. He became depressed, retreated to the mountains to live alone, and didn't want to go home. His wife tried many times to reach out, urging him to face the truth and start a new life. But Jackson refused, stuck in painful memories. 3 days ago, while in the mountains, he got a call from a friend who introduced him to a job as a hunting guide. He was asked to guide hunters for a few days to make a living. Jackson needed work, so he gladly accepted. He had to return home to prepare his belongings. Driving down from the mountains, he packed his bags, only to stumble upon the last thing he wanted to see. His wife, Sarah, was cheating on him. Jackson blocked her from the room. Furious, any man would be driven mad catching his wife in such an act. Confronted with his accusations, Sarah argued back, blaming Jackson for leaving her alone, claiming she had the right to pursue her own happiness. When Jackson refused to accept her excuse, Sarah pulled off her wedding ring and threw an object at his head, knocking him down. The next morning, with bandages wrapped around his head, Jackson went to the meeting place. On the radio, news broke of a small plane crash in the nearby mountains. The official report claimed there were no passengers, only the pilot had died. Jackson didn't pay much attention to this seemingly unrelated story, but it would soon change his fate completely. The meeting point was far away, more than a day's drive. After a full day on the road, Jackson stopped at a motel. At night, he went drinking at a bar, where he met a very beautiful waitress. She occasionally glanced at him. The bar owner explained their usual waitress had taken the day off, so he temporarily hired this attractive but inexperienced young woman. She often dropped and broke things. While Jackson was chatting, she tripped again, spilling dishes all over the floor. Watching her struggle to clean up reminded Jackson of his beloved daughter. He had doted on her so much that even his wife complained. He snapped back from his memory when his old friend MPY showed up. Seeing the bandages on Jackson's head, MPY mocked him. Jackson cracked the same joke he'd told countless times, one his ears were tired of. But he laughed anyway. They chatted briefly before MPY rushed off, saying he was heading to the US-Canada border to hire some men. Jackson returned to his motel room, pulled out his gun, and began cleaning it. Tomorrow, he would meet his friend and head into the mountains for the hunt. As Jackson polished his weapon, he heard a noise outside the door. A retired Navy elite. Jackson wasn't afraid of trouble. He tucked the pistol into his waistband and opened the door. A man was dragging a young woman, clearly up to no good. Seeing Jackson bare-chested with a pistol at his waist, the man instantly sensed danger, let go of the girl, and walked away. Jackson recognized her. It was the same beautiful waitress from the bar. She thanked him, but he silently returned to his room. The next morning, Jackson hit the road again, heading to meet his friend. At his friend's shop, Jackson met the hat-wearing man who had introduced the job to him. From him, Jackson learned that the client who had hired him was a woman. To his surprise, when the friend introduced his employer, Jackson realized he had met her twice before. It was the same beautiful young woman from the bar. Her name was Kate. According to Kate, before her father passed away, he had always wanted to take her hunting in the mountains. But before they could make it happen, he died, leaving her unable to fulfill his wish. This time, she wanted to find someone to accompany her on a hunting trip, not only to fulfill her father's last wish but also to scatter his ashes in a suitable hunting ground. Given the generous commission, Jackson gladly accepted. The two rode horses into the mountains. This was Yellowstone Park in Montana, home to a rich variety of wildlife. But none of the animals here were protected species. All of them could be hunted. On the way into the mountains, Jackson explained to Kate all the taboos of hunting. If they broke the rules, they could be caught and thrown into prison. After traveling all day, they finally reached a mid-mountain hunting camp designed for overnight stays. They tied up the horses and rested there for the night. Tomorrow, they would hike to the hunting grounds with their gear. While Jackson was preparing to spend the night at the camp, a team of mercenaries led by a tattooed woman was also searching the hunting grounds. They weren't there for wildlife, they were after a suitcase. A suitcase stuffed with cash. Just a few days earlier, in the mountains of Afghanistan, thousands of kilometers away, an armed robbery had taken place. A young girl had received a suitcase full of cash from an old man. Struggling to carry it across the vast snow-covered mountains, she passed a shepherd's yard, where she dropped a bag containing a satellite phone to a woman before continuing on her way. Eventually, she reached a Taliban cash transport vehicle. She was helping them transfer the money. Once the couriers loaded the suitcase into the vehicle, they quickly started the engine, rushing to their destination. Meanwhile, the woman in black who had received the satellite phone called her partners to meet at a designated location. Not long after, another woman dressed in black appeared on the only road the cash transport vehicle could take. She blocked it with a flamethrower in hand. The couriers jumped out, guns raised, but of course they couldn't have anticipated such an ambush. They got out, trying to handle the situation, when suddenly the woman's accomplices appeared, armed with automatic weapons. They opened fire on the cash couriers. Outgunned, the couriers were quickly overwhelmed. One courier was shot dead. Another courier, desperate, pulled out a grenade, intending to blow up the mercenaries. But the tattooed woman rushed in, snatched the grenade, and then shot the courier in the head. The armed heist was a success. They hijacked the armored truck carrying the cash and seized the suitcase stuffed with money. Afterward, the tattooed woman ordered the team to retreat, saying they would only discuss splitting the money once they crossed into Canada. The suitcase was handed to a pilot, who was supposed to take it there. But unexpectedly, the plane crashed in Yellowstone Park. After the crash, both the pilot and the suitcase went missing. This was exactly what Jackson had heard on the radio earlier. The mercenaries were now following the tattooed woman into the mountains to recover the suitcase. They had been searching for days, and while the wreckage had been found, there was no sign of the suitcase or the pilot. Jackson knew nothing about the mercenaries. He was still focused on preparing step by step for the hunt. He explained the hunting route to Kate, making clear what she could and couldn't hunt. For instance, crossing into Canada and shooting a North American grizzly would be illegal. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Jackson told Kate she could only hunt reindeer. With the route and target clarified, early the next morning they grabbed their gear and entered the mountains along the planned path. Of course, there were reindeer in these mountains, but they weren't easy to find. After half a day of climbing, they finally reached the hunting area, but saw nothing worth shooting. At the same time, the mercenaries had also arrived in the area, but they didn't cross paths because the terrain was vast. Jackson and Kate soon spotted a grizzly bear. Because Jackson had already warned her beforehand, they didn't shoot. They passed the grizzly and continued on another steep mountain path. Jackson and Kate were at the base when they discovered signs of reindeer. Jackson believed the herd might be at the summit. Perhaps they were still nearby. Kate fell back, exhausted after a full day of trekking, so Jackson told her to wait at the bottom while he scouted ahead alone. Jackson quickly reached the summit, and sure enough, there were reindeer. At first, he saw just one, and then an entire herd. Since Jackson was only the hunting guide, he had no intention of taking a shot himself. But just as he was scanning the area with his binoculars, he spotted a pilot hanging in midair. Jackson was shocked to find out what had happened. He grabbed his rifle and quickly moved to the location. There, he discovered the pilot. He didn't know if the pilot was dead or alive, so he cautiously approached. Jackson realized that the man was stuck on his own parachute. The pilot also carried a compact submachine gun. Dangling beneath the pilot was a suitcase. Jackson knelt down and carefully inspected it. As he slowly opened the lid, he was shocked once again. The suitcase was stacked with bundles of cash. Taking some of the bills in his hand, he looked up at the corpse hanging above, utterly unable to comprehend where the pilot and the money had come from. Not long after, Jackson left the summit, ready to reunite with Kate. But as he descended, he suddenly heard 2 gunshots from Kate's direction. Jackson panicked, fearing something had happened to her. He shouted her name while sprinting downhill. When he reached her, he realized it was a false alarm. Both shots had been fired by Kate. She explained she had spotted a reindeer and taken 2 shots, but missed, and the animal escaped. Jackson didn't tell her what he had just discovered on the mountain. The two returned to camp to spend the night. That night, Jackson sat quietly by the campfire. After his daughter's death, his wife had often urged him to stand up and begin a new life. But Jackson still couldn't break free from the grief. The next morning, Kate, wearing nothing but underwear, walked over to discuss their plans for the day's hunt. But mercenaries had already set their sights on the camp. Once they confirmed there were only 2 people inside, they launched an attack. Jackson, however, didn't panic. He grabbed his backpack, pulled Kate into cover, and returned fire. His marksmanship was far superior to that of the mercenaries. Once Kate was in safety, Jackson charged forward, killing 2 mercenaries with just 2 shots. Even the sniper couldn't take him down and was instead shot in the head by Jackson. Not wanting to prolong the battle, Jackson pulled Kate into the forest. After checking the camp, the mercenaries began pursuit. 2 quickly caught up, but Jackson ambushed them and easily eliminated both. This time, instead of fleeing, he collected their weapons. Though the mercenaries weren't skilled fighters, their weapons were military grade, far superior to his hunting rifle. As he was gathering gear, Kate warned him that more mercenaries were coming. She tossed him a rifle, and Jackson unleashed a burst of fire, killing 2 more enemies on the spot. At this point, Kate was utterly astonished by Jackson's combat skills. She had never imagined he could be this formidable. Even the tattooed woman was surprised. She hadn't expected to run into such a dangerous opponent. Based on Jackson's ferocity, she began to suspect that the missing suitcase might be in his possession. Otherwise, why would he fight so ruthlessly? She ordered her men to continue the chase, sending 2 more on motorcycles to hunt them down. While on the run, Kate's curiosity got the better of her. She asked Jackson what was going on, why these mercenaries were chasing them, and why he was so skilled. To her, everything was a mystery. When they stopped briefly, Jackson gave Kate some clothes and explained what he had discovered: a dead body and a suitcase full of money. To prove it, he showed her the suitcase. He guessed that the mercenaries were after the cash. If he surrendered it, perhaps they'd leave them alone, but Jackson wasn't willing to hand over everything. So he asked Kate to join him in staging a plan. Jackson would stand by the roadside with the suitcase, waiting for the mercenaries. If they came unarmed, they would hand it over. But if they tried to kill them after taking it, Kate would fire from hiding. While they were still discussing the plan, the tattooed woman made another call, this time to the man who had helped her hijack the armored vehicle. He wasn't just a partner, but also one of the top mercenaries. Kate was uneasy about Jackson's idea. She wasn't sure she could save him if he fell into their hands. But Jackson didn't care. He was confident he could kill his enemies and escape on his own. Soon after, the 2 motorcycle mercenaries spotted Jackson standing by the road. They quickly approached, weapons drawn, demanding he put down the suitcase. Immediately, Kate opened fire, and Jackson joined in with a hail of bullets. Both mercenaries collapsed, killed on the spot. Kate had been playing the role of someone uninvolved. But while Jackson was clearing the battlefield, something unexpected happened. She was captured by a sniper dressed in camouflage. At this moment, the situation turned unfavorable for Jackson. The soldier was about to harm Kate, demanding that Jackson exchange the suitcase for her. Jackson fired a random shot, and the bullet hit the soldier right in the head, killing him instantly. Both of them ran into the forest. But soon after, another soldier caught up. His skills were not bad, and the 2 sides exchanged fire for a while without being able to finish each other off. Suddenly, Jackson heard Kate's warning that another soldier was preparing to ambush him. Enraged, Jackson unleashed a burst of bullets, killing the soldier in front of him, then spun around and fired several accurate shots to eliminate the ambusher. When Jackson rushed over and told Kate to move quickly, her curiosity got the better of her. She wanted to know who Jackson really was and why he was so formidable. As if no one could be his match. But Jackson had no time to answer such questions. He suggested they split up and go down the mountain separately. Kate immediately refused. After all, she was just a girl, and who knew what those mercenaries would do if they caught her. After some arguing, Jackson had no choice but to take Kate with him. They descended the mountain together. Fortunately, no more enemies came their way, because the bald-headed soldier himself had joined the chase. Forced to flee down a cliffside, they realized if they wanted to survive without changing their route, they had to climb up the rock face. They quickly figured out a method, tying themselves together with a rope, with Jackson leading the climb. Once the rope was taut, Kate, carrying the backpack, would follow. The plan worked well. But they overlooked one critical problem: someone was chasing from behind. Jackson had barely climbed up when the bald-headed man caught up. He attempted to stealthily snatch Ket's backpack. But he underestimated her. Though her shooting wasn't great, Ket's fighting skills were not weak. She suddenly turned and counterattacked, catching him off guard. Then she ran in the opposite direction from Jackson, a clever move. If the man wanted to catch her, he'd have to let Jackson go. If he went after Jackson, she could escape. But the bald-headed soldier wasn't a fool. He picked up the rope and began pulling. His real target was, of course, Ket. Since she was carrying the backpack, Ket was quickly dragged back toward him. Jackson, realizing the danger below, scrambled up to the top of the cliff and fired furiously at the bald-headed man. Though he didn't kill him, it was enough to remove the immediate threat to Ket's life. As the bald man dodged the bullets, Ket started pulling on the rope and climbing up. The soldier saw an opening to fight back, but Jackson's gunfire struck him, sending him tumbling into the river below. His fate uncertain. Thanks to Jackson's cover, Ket made it to the top of the cliff safely. When they finally reached a secure spot and were about to rest, Jackson noticed Ket was injured. Her wound was on her thigh. But being a true gentleman, he had no improper thoughts. He simply helped her treat the wound, then let her pull her pants back on. And they continued their journey. They had to hurry to the parking area, still a long way ahead. To ensure their safety, Jackson came up with another unusual idea. He suggested hiding the suitcase in a safe place and throwing the backpack into the river. That way, if mercenaries encountered them and saw they weren't carrying the suitcase, they might let them go. Once the mercenaries retreated and it was safe, they could return to retrieve the suitcase. Ket agreed with Jackson's plan. They quickly reached the spot. Jackson pointed to a large, dried-up tree. Using a rope, he secured the suitcase inside a hollow and tied it tightly. This way, even if mercenaries found the tree, they wouldn't be able to discover the suitcase without noticing the rope. Taking advantage of the night, they went to the riverbank and threw the backpack into the water before continuing their escape. Under the starry sky, after a night of traveling, the two finally reached the edge of the mountain. Just when they thought they could soon get out, they saw the tattooed woman guarding the ridge. Not wanting to fight her, they slipped into the forest and began to run. Hearing the noise, the tattooed woman immediately fired her gun and chased them. That was when Jackson realized that even without the suitcase, the mercenaries would never let them leave. Their only option now was to keep escaping at all costs. The woman chased and fired until Jackson reached a dead end, with a raging river below. Believing that his naval training would save him, he urged Kate to jump with him. Having only known him for a few days, Kate already saw Jackson as an invincible warrior, so she didn't hesitate to leap after him. Once in the water, Jackson found it far colder than he had imagined. The river might not drown him, but the freezing temperature nearly killed him. Kate, however, was in far better shape. Not only was she safe, she even managed to rescue Jackson. The tattooed woman soon discovered they had left her perimeter. Furious, she turned back, unwilling to accept their escape. Suddenly, the bald man reappeared. He was not dead after all. Amid Kate's cries, Jackson finally surfaced from the river. The two made it to shore and continued heading out of the mountains. Though they managed to leave the mountain, they were now farther from where they had parked their car. To avoid mercenary pursuit, they went toward the highway, hoping to hitch a ride back to town. Luck was on their side again. Soon, a car approached, and Jackson waved for it to stop. When it did, he heard a familiar voice. The driver was MPY. An old friend. Neither Jackson nor Kate could have foreseen what would happen next. As MPY greeted them, he suddenly grabbed a wrench and struck Jackson unconscious from behind. Then he aimed a gun at Kate, forcing her to drag Jackson into the car. The bald man spotted MPY but did not fire, since he hadn't seen the suitcase. Kate awoke first after fainting and realized she and Jackson were tied up inside a warehouse. She called out to him but got no response. Hearing the noise, MPY rushed in, demanding to know where the suitcase was. When Kate gave no answer, he turned to Jackson. After a series of tortures, MPY finally woke Jackson. But surprisingly, Jackson and Kate's testimonies matched perfectly. Both insisted they had never seen the suitcase. Of course, MPY did not believe them. As he prepared to torture Jackson further, Jackson revealed his true skills, slipping free from the chains around his wrists. He killed MPY on the spot. As Jackson searched for Kate, the tattooed woman and the bald man arrived. It turned out the bald man hadn't shot MPY earlier because he wanted to use him as bait for a bigger catch. Jackson found Kate, but as they tried to escape, the four inevitably clashed in a deadly fight inside the warehouse. Jackson declared that his performance had always been flawless and that he would defeat the bald man. Meanwhile, Kate and the tattooed woman engaged in a fierce battle. The latter was the leader of the mercenaries, making their duel especially intense. The fight between Jackson and the bald man ended quickly. Just as the bald man was gaining the upper hand, Kate intervened and shot him dead. Naturally, Kate also defeated the tattooed woman. At this point, all their enemies seeking the suitcase were dead. With no need to flee anymore, the two returned to the mountain. Happily, they dug into a hollow tree and pulled out the suitcase. But just as Jackson suggested that Kate place his father's ashes under the tree, she suddenly drew a pistol from the urn and, without hesitation, shot him. She then pulled a satellite phone from her bag, tore off her wig, and revealed her true identity. She was the same woman holding the satellite phone in Afghanistan, part of the mercenary group. Kate had hired Jackson only to use him for protection and to monopolize the stolen fortune. She never expected his fighting skills to be so powerful. Not only did he protect her, he eliminated every rival along the way. The story ends here. Jackson paid with his life. Betrayed and used, Kate killed him and successfully claimed all the stolen money for herself. This video shows us that not every story has a perfect ending. That's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button for more. See you in the next one.